Hello adventurers, can you believe another year has passed by? Today we're going to be taking an exclusive first look at the new class, the Druid, primal guardians who transform into beasts, call fierce animal companions, and summon nature's fury. They are a melee hybrid class. First, let's take a look at the character customization. Let's take a look at the gear previews for all four of the models. I think my favorite one is the green one by far. Yeah, definitely the green one. All right, and let's customize. Fine. Let's take a look at the different hairstyles. Kind of like this one. Not gonna mess with the class customization too much. I don't like that one. Blue in the hair. Eyebrows are fine. Pupils. Doesn't look that green, but that. And of course you can do random, but this looks pretty good so far. Let's just do this. All right, and let's go to Druid land and take a look at the skills and essences. The very first thing we need to discuss about Druid is this new green bar that's on the UI. This green bar is your primal power. Primal power slowly depletes as you use abilities that consume primal power. There are also skills and abilities that generate primal power, but this is a depleting resource that can either A, regenerate, it can drain, it can be used to empower your attacks, but this is the primal power. And as you see, if I use an ability that drains primal power, the green bar will slowly deplete. And this resource will slowly regenerate primal power as you're not consuming. Alright, and we're going to take a look at the base skills first. So all the essences are off. And we're going to just take a look at the base skills. First up, we have Ferocious Strike. Swing and slam your staff, dealing damage over 3 attacks. Enemies other than your primary target take only 25% damage from your swings and slams. Generate 2 primal power per second and 1 primal power when hitting an enemy with an attack. The ultimate, Ferocious Strike, is enhanced for 12 seconds, embracing a savage aspect of the bear to strike with massive claws, dealing damage 10, 13, 16, respectively, which each hit in sequence of 3 attacks. Fang Claw also grants you a shield for 5 seconds that absorbs damage equal to 20% of your maximum life. Alright, so that's the sequence. 2, 3, and then 4. Next up, we have Landslide. Crack the earth and call forth jagged rocks, projecting them forward in a line that bursts with spikes when it hits an enemy, dealing damage. Generate 2 primal power every second and 1 primal power when hitting an enemy with a primary attack. Landslide is enhanced for 12 seconds, instead conjuring 5 slabs of rock at a time for you to rain down on enemies, dealing damage to nearby enemies when they fall. A single enemy can take a maximum of 3 hits, with damage after the first hit reduced by 50%. Nature's Wrath also grants you a shield for 5 seconds that absorbs damage equal to 20% of your maximum life. So both ultimates grant you shield. Interesting. And one is a ranged attack. Can you select where this goes? No, you can't. It just kind of goes to the end. Next up, Circle of Life. Strike the ground, causing vines to quickly grow and create a field of restorative flora for 10 seconds, healing you and allies within for 5,000 life every second. The vines produce a healing blossom every 1.5 seconds, and you or your allies heal for 10,000 life when you touch them, consuming the blossom. Generate 15 primal power when used. If you grab this, yeah. You grab these and then you get healed. Earthquake. Create an earth-shattering tremor at a target location, dealing damage and knocking enemies airborne. Effective enemies fall back to the earth with great force, dealing damage to nearby enemies where they land. Charge this skill to increase its area by 50%. Generate 9 primal power when used. Fire Tornado. Conjure a tornado of flame at a target location for 4 seconds that continuously pulls in enemies, dealing damage per second. Effective enemies are also burned for damage per second over said seconds. Generate 9 primal power when used. Rabid Might. Unleash a savage roar that inspires and invigorates, increasing the maximum life of nearby allies by 12.5% and your maximum life by 25% for 180 seconds. Those effective are also immune to next 3 total loss of control effects for 6 seconds. Generate 15 primal power when used. So the animation is just the leaves. Raven Swarm. Become a flock of ravens and fly to a target location during which you are untargetable. You'll deal damage to nearby enemies when you arrive at the target location, reverting to your original form. Maximum 2 charges. Generate 6 primal power when used. Stag Charge. Become a noble stag to perform 3 successive leaps, dealing damage, and damage respectively upon landing. The first 2 leaps also slow enemies, reducing their movement speed by 40%, which can stack. The final leap also knock enemies airborne. You are immune to loss of control and knockback while the skill is active. Generate 6 primal power when used. And you can steer the direction of what you want to go. So you can just go forward, and you can also turn around and go backwards as well. So you should be able to hopefully hit one target with all 3. In practice, it's gonna be a little tough to do. Summon Grizzly. Summon a grizzly companion for 24 seconds that leaps to a target location and roars, dealing damage to nearby enemies and stunning them for 4 seconds. The Grizzly Companion strikes enemies with his claws, dealing damage. Every 5 seconds, the Grizzly Companion can smash the ground, dealing damage and knocking back enemies. Generate 36 primal power when used. Summon Oak Sage. Active. Command one Oak Sage to fly to a target location and self-destruct, dealing damage to nearby enemies and immobilizing them for 4 seconds. When an Oak Sage's summon time expires, they will automatically self-destruct if enemies are nearby. Generate 9 primal power when used. Passive. Summon one Oak Sage for every 3 primary attacks that hit an enemy, up to a maximum of 3 Oak Sages, each fighting alongside you by firing projectiles that deal damage. So every 3 attacks I get an Oak Sage, and then I can command them kind of move. Summon Wolves. Active. Command your wolf companions to pounce on a target, dealing damage to the target and nearby enemies, causing them to bleed for 1000 damage per second over 4 seconds. Generate 6 primal power when used. Passive. Summon 2 wolf companions to fight alongside you. If lost, wolf companions resummon after 6 seconds. Urging Stone. Tap into the raw strength of the earth, consuming primal power to cause thorned spires of rock to erupt from the earth every 1 second, dealing damage to nearby enemies and causing them to bleed over time. The spires of rock also knock enemies airborne, but no more than once every 6 seconds. Consume 10 primal power when active. And it moves with you. And then here's the targeting circle. Thorn Armor. Grant nearby allies Thorn Armor for 5 seconds that absorbs damage. Thorns will erupt from you when attacked, dealing damage to nearby enemies and slowing them by 40%. Cannot occur more often than once per second. Generate 9 primal power when used. Werebear. Transform into a werebear and roar, dealing damage and stunning nearby enemies for 2 seconds. While a werebear, you gain 1 stack of Earth Sign Endurance, reducing the damage you take and the duration of lost control effects by 3%, stacking up to 10 times. You consume 5 primal power per second while transformed. While a werebear, your primary attack is Maul, wide swing claw attacks that deal damage. And then here are the active skills. Crush, smash the ground with both hands, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. And additional damage equal to 10% of your maximum life. Maximum 3 charges. Bound, this is your dash. Dash forward, knocking back enemies in your path, dealing damage. You are immune to lost control and knockback effects during dash. Mangle, grab 2 enemies in front of you, slam them together, creating an explosive force that deals damage and stuns enemies. Dealing additional damage equal to 10% of your maximum life. The enemies grabbed and slammed together are stunned for 3 seconds. It's the slam. This is the dash. This is the gather and slam. And then you can of course exit werebear at any time. And finally, Werewolf. Transform into a werewolf and dash forward, dealing 20,000 damage and marking enemies along your path. When a marked enemy's life drops below 50%, they will take damage. Movement speed is increased by 30% and you consume 5 primal power per second while transformed. While a werewolf, your primary attack is swipe, a sequence of claw attacks that deal damage with every 3rd attack applying a bleed. And here are the skills. Rend and Tear. Dash forward, dealing damage to enemies along your path. Enemies below 50% life will be dealt damage and knocked airborne, no more than once every 6 seconds against enemy players. Lunge. Run quickly as you charge a skill, increasing your movement speed by 30%. Release the skill to lunge forward, knocking back enemies in your path and dealing damage. Howl. Unleash a powerful howl, dealing damage to all nearby enemies and marking them. When a marked enemy's life drops below 50%, they will take damage. Alright, that's the auto attack. Here's the first skill. This is the dash, which is super fast. Here's skill number 3. And of course, we can exit. Now let's take a look at the essences. First up, we have the helm. This Spring Veil. Werebear is now toggled on or off, and while on, you consume primal power to continuously sprint forward, damaging and knocking back enemies in your path. Bounding Accuracy. Werebear now leaps to a target, damaging all nearby enemies and increasing the attack speed and critical hit chance of your primary attack. Ashmonger. Fire Tornado now unleashes an expanding ring of fire, damaging and burning enemies. Burning enemies explode when their life falls too low. The Yawning Maw. Summon Grizzly now summons a flaming bear that continuously burns nearby enemies and can be commanded to leap to a location, damaging enemies, increasing its critical hit chance. Fang Blade. Fire Tornado now targets a location, causing a cinder cone to form and pull in nearby enemies, then erupt with a burst of flame that damages and knocks them airborne. Trailing Vine. Thorn Armor also increases your critical hit chance by 8% while active. Snarling Face. Werewolf now causes you to perform a quick backstep before dashing forward. If you hit an enemy, trigger a powerful follow-up uppercut with both claws that knocks enemies airborne. Mask of Pouncing. Stag Charge also increases your primal power generation by 30% for 3 seconds. Gilded Majesty. Summon Grizzly now summons a bear imbued with the relentless power of the forest thicket, able to attack with stunning thorns, consume primal power to resurrect, and be commanded to leap into a group of enemies and taunt them. Let's take a look at the chest. Barb Mantle. Thorn Armor now only shields you, and while active causes your attacks to scatter thorns, damaging nearby enemies. Skill can be triggered on primary attack. Saw Notch. While a werebear, each enemy you kill will increase your attack and movement speeds by 8% for 4 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. Flesh is fertile ground. Thorn Armor is now toggled on or off, and while it consumes primal power to grant damage reduction to all nearby allies and continuously damage nearby enemies. Saved by Nature. Circle of Life now grants nearby allies a regenerative seed that continuously heals life and heals a large amount if their life drops too low. Coat of Fecundity. Thorn Armor now creates an area of thorny vines that follows you, continuously damaging nearby enemies and infecting them with smolder seeds, which explode if the infected enemy is burning. Earth Bindings. Earthquake now smashes the ground and empowers you, causing your movements to unleash aftershocks every few yards. Wild Surrender. Circle of Life is now channeled, continuously healing life and generating primal power. You gain damage reduction but cannot move while channeling. Life Begets. Circle of Life now passively heals you while you avoid damage and can be activated to heal you in a burst of energy that also damages and stuns nearby enemies. The burst triggers automatically if your life falls too low. Whispers of the Soil. Earthquake now conjures a swirling maelstrom of rock at a target location, damaging and petrifying enemies within. Allied summons in the maelstrom gain a protective shell, taking reduced damage and gaining immunity to knockback and loss of control effects. Your Shoulders. Thrill of the Hunt. While a werewolf generates 3 primal power for each enemy killed, it can only trigger once every second. Pile of Plenty. Werebear cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds each time your primary attack hits an enemy. Thor Skull. Raven Swarm also increases your movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. Barghast Beacon. Summon Wolves now summons Firewolves to fight alongside you and burn enemies who can be commanded to breathe fire and increase their attack speed. Grand Endurance. Werebear now calls you to jump to a target location, damaging nearby enemies and gaining an absorb shield. While the shield is active, you take reduced damage. Raise Bark. While a werewolf, you deal 10% increased damage against enemies suffering from a continual damage effect. Pete Spawed. Werebear increases your movement speed by 40% for 3 seconds when hitting an enemy. All Are Prey. While a werewolf, you deal 20% increased damage to enemies, reducing by 5% for every ally within 5 yards, up to a maximum reduction of 109,001%. That's wrong. That would be super broken. Promise the Obscure. Werebear now unleashes a sequence of 4 attacks as you move in a direction, knocking back enemies. You are immune to knockback and loss of control during these attacks. For the Pants. Savagery Adored. Using Rend and Tear also increases the critical hit chance of primary attacks by 15% for 3 seconds. Odd Abundance. Rabid Might now increases your maximum life until you die and temporarily increases damage of your primary attacks based on your current primal power. Occasional Pillar. Surging Stone deals 25% increased damage but consumes 25% more primal power. Lightling Drape. Summon Oak Sage damage increases by 5% for 5 seconds each time they attack, up to a maximum of 20%. Unstoppable Redress. Rend and Tear can be used while under the effects of total loss of control, consuming 15 primal power and removing the status. Drive Greaves. Rend and Tear consumes 5 primal power, increasing its critical hit chance by 25%. Shatter Grouse. Crush also shatters enemy armor, increases damage they take by 15% for 3 seconds. Scorched Birth. Stag Charge now leaps to the target location, generating primal power based on the number of enemies hit. Mud Rooters. Your summon wolves heal you for 30% of the damage they deal. For main hands. Frenzy Reed. Rabid Might duration is extended by 30% while transformed. Burn Socket. Fire Tornado generates an additional 1 primal power per enemy hit up to a maximum of 10. 100 Wings Shade. Raven Swarm now dashes forward as a flock of ravens, during which you are untargetable and damage enemies along your path. A portion of the cooldown is returned if no enemies are hit. Rattling Shell. Summon wolves also increase your movement speed by 15% for each active wolf companion under your control. Staff of Droves. Landslide also increases your primary attack speed by 7% for 5 seconds when it hits an enemy, stacking up to 3 times. Branch of Growling Earth. Earthquake damage is increased by 20% when it hits a slowed enemy. The Ordered Crook. Werewolf transformation now causes you to leap to a target location, knocking enemies airborne and marking them. Your critical hit chance is increased against the marked enemies, and you restore life when the mark expires. Werebear now transform you into a gigantic bear with increased attack range and maximum life. Lift the Lowborn. Earthquake also grants you a shield for 4 seconds that absorbs damage and makes you immune to 1 total loss of control effect. And lastly, Throw the Offhands. Goring Brace. Ferocious Strike generates an additional 5 primal power when hitting an enemy. This can only occur 1 time every 3 seconds. Scar Carver. Rend and Tear now causes you to dash forward, and if the attack hits, you can activate a powerful follow-up attack that sweeps in a wide arc, dealing additional damage to enemies at low life. Mauler's Mitt. Crush now empowers you, causing your primary attack to smash the ground and damage nearby enemies, with critical hits causing spikes of rock to erupt from the ground for additional damage. Sapling Claw. Summon Oak Sage no longer passively summons and instead actively summons a ring of Oak Sages that automatically seek out targets and self-destruct, damaging all nearby enemies. Distant Hissing. Rend and Tear now slashes with both claws, unleashing a claw wind at enemies in front of you. If burning enemies are close to you, the range and damage of the claw wind increases, and it knocks back enemies. Hobbletooth. Crush now slams the ground to create shockwaves, damaging and slowing nearby enemies. Can be used during other skills. Cedarkin. Summon Oak Sage no longer passively summons and instead actively summons protective Oak Sages to orbit you, each granting damage reduction and immunity against 1 total loss of control effect. Ifeh's Nails. Mangle consumes 15 primal power after use to reset its cooldown. This cannot occur more often than once every 12 seconds. And finally, Hungry Blades. Your summon Grizzly generates 2 primal power when it takes damage. Cannot occur more than once per second. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed the preview of all the new skills and essences for the new Druid class that is coming soon. I will be creating another video shortly, sometime in the near future, going over the first PvP build. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss that. Please let me know down in the comments what you think of the new skills and the essences so far. Whether you like the class customizations, just your general thoughts on the Druid. So, thanks so much everyone for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye!